So if you're listening, Olivia, we really like your movies.
Yeah, a big shout out to Olivia, who is like turning 104 soon, I think. Hello and welcome to Pod Hard with me, Jonas Högberg.
Anders Hultqvist.
And for the first time in our English-speaking variant of this pod, we have a fantastic guest with us. None other than Alex Rallo. Is that the way you pronounce it?
It is, yeah.
Hello, Alex.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Alex is the fantastic man behind the fantastic Twitter handle Head Exposure, is also part of Film Exposure, which is, a site dedicated to movies. And I'm guessing it's not only action movies as a whole.
Correct.
Yeah. But from what I've gathered, you seem to be quite enamored with action movies, Alex.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I started the Twitter account. I was only posting headshots, and then I decided that it was too much work. So yeah, I changed the concept of the account, and I'm just posting about action movies mostly. Sometimes horror movies, sometimes other stuff as well, but mostly action movies that I found interesting, or action scenes. Sometimes there are good scenes in mediocre movies, so I'm mostly focused on good stuff that I find anywhere. But I'm really happy to be here because we're talking the history of action cinema. So really glad you thought of me.
Yeah. Now recently you dug up a lot of interesting stuff that we kind of missed. So we were very happy to have you on here. You kind of like dug up the Balrog of action cinema, digging deep on some stuff. So really
it's,
fun.
That's I think the tragic part of being on Twitter and seeing film discussion is that. Is to see that it's always the same stuff that comes up, so I think it's nice to try to talk about movies that have been mostly forgotten or, are not talked about that much.
Broaden the perspective.
Exactly.
So Alex, just quickly, what kind of action movies do you tend to gravitate toward?
The ones where you can see what's happening.
Ah.
Those.
It's a pretty borderless perspective. So like from anywhere in the world and any era of filmmaking, mostly interested in anyone who can push the envelope, who can try new stuff, who can make old stuff feel fresh. There's always a way, I'm also a great admirer of whoever, of great technicians, like masterful technicians. So even if they don't bring anything new to the table, if they do something that's just pitch perfect, and that's my jam as well. And not really, I don't really have any. I don't really have any favorites, really. It's just the good stuff. I'm not a big fan of handheld and shaky cam, but it works when it works, Some filmmakers are good at it, and when they are, then I'm there for it.
And you talked about being an admirer of great technicians, movie makers that get things done, maybe not showing off as much. Which I think summarizes the filmmaker we're talking about today, Mr. Michael Curtiz from Hungary, who, he wasn't enamored as much as other Hollywood filmmakers by the French Wave guys that brought up Hitchcock and Hughes and other filmmakers they elevated them to a position, an author position. Michael Curtiz perhaps got he was okay. Many thought he always had a standard, but he didn't push the envelope, so to say. Well, that's what they said, at least. So,
but what do you say?
Well,
Alex?
the thing with Curtiz is that he was really a studio filmmaker. He had a contract with the studio, and he made films for that studio, and he made the films he was asked to make. When Hughes was working more independently, and Hitchcock really had his name was becoming famous. Well, not in the beginning, but eventually his name became famous in and of itself. But Curtiz was really someone who would put the movie first, and that what mattered to him was tell a good story, tell it well, and make a successful film. And a lot of his films were extremely successful at the box office, and a lot of them were also very well received by critics. So I think maybe he didn't cultivate it himself, the image of the author. But I think as far as studio filmmakers go, in my humble opinion, he was one of the most efficient and one of the most interesting.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Michael Curtiz has Casablanca on his CV. I mean, that not that many directors can claim such a epoch-setting movie.
He has Casablanca, and he has other stuff like White Christmas and Angels with Dirty Faces. In other genres, and those are films that have really made a huge impact on the American culture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Yankee Doodle Dandy, Mildred Pierce. He was such a versatile director as well. I mean, he made movies in all sorts of genres, really. He could very effortlessly move with grace between the movie genres. Made light comedies, made swashbucklers, made musicals, made dramas. I mean, he basically knew it all.
He did, yeah. Well, even before arriving in Hollywood, he was very experienced. I think he arrived when he was 39 years old or something, and he had made 64 films in Europe by the time he arrived in Hollywood. So, he knew what he was doing already. So he had been extremely prolific during the silent era. And today we're gonna talk about sound films, obviously, and that's something that should be noted as well, is that the transition to silent to sound did not affect his quality or output. He was still as prolific. Sometimes he would make 3 or 4 pictures a year.
I would say even more than that. We checked up his CV on IMDb, and he made 6 or 7 movies most of the years during the 30s. This was a man who was like a workaholic beyond workaholics. Yeah. I mean, he was only happy when he was directing movies. A very special kind of person. And I knew very little about Michael Curtiz going into this, but I have been a bit enamored with the guy, I have to say. I think he has a great eye for framing, and he always uses a moving camera as much as he can in images. And I've read a book about him, and so I know that he had lots of clashes with his producer, Hal Wallis, about he wanted the movie done quickly and on budget, and Michael Curtiz always did his best to come up with new scenes, and wanted always to do the best possible work to all these scenes, while the producer and Jack Warner only wanted him to do these plain 2-camera solutions going back and forth between actors. So yeah, you have to give Curtiz credit for actually wanting to bring something special, something extra to these movies.
Yeah, you're referring to the book by Alan K. Rode, on Curtiz.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had a look at it yesterday. I read a good part of it, and it's almost humorous how for every film that he talks about, there is a paragraph about Hal Wallis sending a memo to Curtiz saying, "What the hell are you doing? Just film the script." And every single time, Curtiz would ignore the memos and just do his thing, and the films would be hugely successful.
Yeah, just goes to show. Let Curtiz do his thing. Yes, and so, yes, we're talking about 3 movies today. Talking about 3 swashbuckler movies that Michael Curtiz did, and all of them starring Errol Flynn. Anders, what's your relation to Errol?
Mainly, I would say I watched these movies as a kid, maybe 10 to 12 years. And it was very exciting at that time, but I haven't returned to much of them. It's one of the things for this project that we are doing, to either return to stuff that I'm interested to see again, or just stuff that I haven't seen to see, but that I won't do on my own, so to say. So I'm forced to watch some stuff for this podcast.
Yeah, that's good. Coming out of your comfort zone. So we're talking about 3 movies. We're talking about Captain Blood. We're talking about The Adventures of Robin Hood, and we're talking about The Seahawk. And all of these are called swashbuckler movies. So what is a swashbuckler movie? Would you care to elaborate, Alex?
What's a swashbuckler movie? I think I'm not very good with etymology, but I think there's 2 parts to the name, swash and buckle. And the idea was that swash was the idea of hitting with the sword, and buckle was like a small shield. And I think when the name appeared originally, it was kind of derogative, pejorative, but the genre of swashbucklers is it comes from a movement of romanticism from literature, obviously, and a movement that was created against enlightenment, that promotes imagination and dreams, individualism, and also that is quite fascinated with the past. That's why most swashbucklers, are set in, or all are set in the past. So it's, it's when you try to trace the history of the genre, even through literature, it's you have to look at writers like Byron or Keats, even Shelley, and even music has been influenced by Romanticism. Like we have Berlioz and Wagner and Liszt as well, who will be important later on, because Korngold, the composer of all 3 films that we're talking about today, was hugely influenced by the music from these composers. Then obviously there's Alexandre Dumas, who wrote The 3 Musketeers, and there's Robert Louis Stevenson and other writers, and Raphael Sabatini, who wrote the novels Captain Blood and The Seahawk, so whose work has been adapted numerous times in the genre. And so the swashbuckler is, I think, when you try to look at the history of action cinema, you had, in the silent period, you really had like the chase film, and sometimes there's like boxing movies as well, in the silent era, but not much else in terms of codified genres, that could be classified as action. And I think the swashbuckler was one of the first ones where you could see, you see a couple of elements on screen and you think immediately, oh, okay, I'm watching that genre of film, so it's set in the past. There's a chivalrous hero, even if he's an outlaw, usually he's like, very gallant and like a gentleman. It's just men. Like I think until the 50s or so, it's just men, the heroes. And sword action, some sea action as well, as we're gonna see. I know you guys have covered some of them because obviously you've talked about Douglas Fairbanks.
Absolutely.
In your previous episodes. So I think 1920 is really the year where the first cycle of swashbucklers starts with the Mark of Zorro, and it lasts until the Iron Mask, 1929, and it's all like Douglas Fairbanks. He was the engine really propelling the genre in Hollywood at the time, and he set the standard for a lot of stuff, like a lot of the action, a lot of the pace, and a lot of the structure of the stories as well. Yeah, and the movies we're talking about today, they're from the second cycle of Hollywood swashbucklers. There was like a break, in the production. The arrival of sound technology made it harder to make those adventures for a couple of years, and then also the flavor changed, in the movie going audience. I'm sure you have had to walk your way through a lot of gangster pictures and stuff like this. So at the time, that was that was what people wanted to see. But ironically speaking, it's the Hays Code that you were mentioning, the Hays Code in your 1930 episode. I know, and the Hays Code actually was a factor for the return of the swashbuckler. Because we can't show gangsters anymore. We can't show sexy stuff, and we can't show illegal stuff. So what better setting than the past and a chivalrous hero, fighting for freedom. So really the moral outrage at the time that brought forth the Hays Code was the reason why, or one of the reasons why. The swashbucklers made a return in the 30s. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, Jonas.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Anders, have you fallen asleep now, or are you still with us?
No, I was. I'm aiming for going to sleep, listening to your beautiful voices. So I was thinking if you could just go on for hours, you two. But it reminds me of Douglas Fairbanks' Robin Hood, that intertitle that said "When men were men" and blah blah blah. There's a great intertitle in that one that I remember, or faintly remember. But about that romanticized view on history and when men were men and built castles and stuff, I think it said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the perfect setting for this romantic idea of adventure.
Yeah, and I mean, Errol Flynn, of course, he became Douglas Fairbanks' successor, and was. Well, Errol Flynn is a story in himself, of course. Him having a very weird backstory before coming into movies. I mean, he left Australia, bamboozling a lady, stealing her jewels, going on a boat to London. Finding work in a theater, using the jewels to further his career in arts and crafts, and
so he is a pirate.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. He was a bit of a rogue, actually, Errol Flynn, and he was also a bit of a lucky dude, like a Gladstone Gander from the Disney universe. The character that has all the luck in the world, because I mean he got everything served to him on in Sweden we would call it a räkmacka, a shrimp sandwich, and he was lucky that Douglas Fairbanks Jr. actually saw him perform on stage in London and saw that, well, this guy, he has something. It reminds me of Dad in a way, and sort of recommended Errol Flynn to Warner Bros., who had their own people in London checking for new talent. And so Errol Flynn was shipped away to Los Angeles, and like his second role, I think, was the lead in Captain Blood. And of course, this was Warner Bros. Biggest movie since the silent era. So a lot of money was hanging on this movie. And it was pretty unheard of back then that you would put a totally unknown person in the lead of a movie. But they had so much faith in this guy that he had the charisma going for him. Yeah, eventually it worked out perfectly, but it was a bit of a gamble, to say the least.
I think it's really the combination of Flynn and Curtiz that made Captain Blood the success it was, because from all accounts, Flynn wasn't very good as an actor in the beginning.
Yeah.
He struggled with his deliveries, and he felt like people said he was a bit wooden. And like I think they tried to shoot Captain Blood in sequence, more or less, but they had to go back in the end to the first scenes to reshoot them because he had become much better by the end of the production than he was in the beginning. And I know that I haven't read a lot about Errol Flynn. I tend to be more interested in the directors than the actors, but I know he despised Michael Curtiz. He hated working with him, found him too tyrannical, and there were stories about Curtiz not caring about animals on set, which Flynn didn't like at all. But at that time, the studio was calling the shots in who was directing the picture and who was starring in it. So even after Errol Flynn had become, a star, he still had to work with Curtiz because Warner Brothers said so. He owed his stardom to the Swashbuckler, but also in the end he grew resentful of this typecasting that he had become the figure of the genre.
Absolutely, and he and Curtiz actually did like 12 movies together, which, I mean, if you hated each other by the end of the first movie, it would be a very strenuous relationship, to say the least.
That's some stamina, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe showing a bit in the Seahawk that it was a strained relation and that he was tired of the genre. I think he's kind of just going through the motions in that one, or not even going through the motions. I think he's at his best in this first one, Captain Blood.
So that's your favorite, eh?
I don't know about Errol Flynn. I think the character fits him well. There's this kind of humble and proud arrogance to this Blood character that he it's basically the image I have of Flynn, or I think he presents it well. So it suits him.
Yeah, so Captain Blood then, just a quick reminder of the plot for everybody who's listening. It's based, I think, in the 16th century or something like that. So you got a lot of ships. It's based in the Caribbean. The movie begins in England, where this character, Peter Blood, a physician, played by Errol Flynn, is being falsely accused of supporting rebels and is being put in chains and transported to the Caribbeans, where he's being bought by Olivia de Havilland's character, Arabella Bishop. And later on, he, of course, breaks free from his chains, elopes, steals a ship, and becomes a pirate. That's the basic gist of it. So just want to know, what did you guys think of it? Alex, what's your opinion on Captain Blood?
I'm gonna repeat myself a lot tonight because I like all three movies that we're talking about. But maybe, I don't know, like, when I approach movies, I always ask myself questions like, what's its importance historically speaking, what did it bring to the table at the time, and stuff like that. And that always factors in my appreciation of the films. So what do you think of Captain Blood? It's not my favorite of the three, because there were still some budget limitations. Like Warner felt that the genre was making a comeback, but they weren't sure. So they said, okay, this has to come in at under $1 million. So Hal Wallis was really on Curtiz' back all the time, constant memos and attempts at micromanagement. All unfruitful, obviously. but Curtiz did make the picture for less than $1 million. There were two other films like in 1934 that were that were quite successful. I think it was Treasure Island and The Count of Monte Cristo. They were like two adventure period movies. And so Warner saw this and they were like, okay, we have to get into the game as well. So let's do Captain Blood. There was a previous adaptation of Captain Blood from 1924 from the Vitograph studio, which had been bought by that time by Warner. So Warner owned the previous adaptation as well, and they thought, okay, let's make it again. And it's I think it's a film that's interesting because it's set in stone this kind of double bad guy structure that comes back in a lot of swashbucklers afterwards. You're gonna have like the mid-film action set piece and then the final one. You're gonna have always gonna have like two villains. One usually doesn't fight really, like he's kind of a regent or a king or something like that, but he's not a fighting villain. But the second one is always like the most physical, energetic bad guy, and that's something you see here very clearly with Basil Rathbone. He's playing Levasseur, who's a pirate as well, and who will have a duel with Peter Blood in the middle of the film. And then you have the other character played by Lionel Atwill, who's the main bad guy, who is not the fighting bad guy. So that's an interesting structure, and in terms of action, because that's what we're talking about here, really. Even with the budget limitations, you can see huge difference with the 1924 films. Like, there's only 10 years difference, but really, like, it looks a world apart. And so the 1935 version, the Curtiz version, was filmed mostly in the studio, and they built the sets for the plantation, the ship's decks, the streets of Port Royal. So they didn't have full-scale ships, but they have like models, 18-foot models. So the set piece, like, they remain pretty economical, but I think they're still fairly impressive. I really like both the duel and the final attack on the French ship. Curtiz, I think, has a lot of ideas. I think the only time where it shows that they couldn't do all that they wanted was the first really action set piece when the Spaniards, they attack Port Royal, and then Blood leads the slaves to take the Spanish ship and destroy like the small boats where the Spaniards are. So here you can really see the models. You can really see that the back projection maybe isn't the best. You can see like there's like just stickmen inside of the boats if you pay close attention. And I've read that they reused footage from the 1925 film, but I've read that, but I've had a look at it and I couldn't identify any of the shots that were repeated. So I'm not sure about that, but I've read several sources that said that they use stock footage. So it's possible for this set piece anyway.
But this, I like that scene though. That first Spanish attack. There's some nice explosions and destruction, and Curtiz can do some of his favorite occupation there. Film some shadows scuttling across walls.
Yeah, he sure loves those shadows.
Dynamic scene.
Well, you know, he's a European director who came from a very expressionist milieu, so it's only natural, I think.
Looks really good, but it's really funny. I was thinking about you guys talk about the producer sending notes and what the hell are you doing all the time, and then he deliver a movie within budget and it's a success, so they can't they can't just discard him either. So.
I know they knew that he was good and that he everything that he did because he thought it was good for the film. And not because, like, you know, he was being, like, too extravagant or whatever. But Hal Wallis was kind of a control freak, I think. And he was trying, you know, to go up the ranks in the, you know, producer hierarchy at Warner Brothers. And he really wanted to micromanage what Curtiz was doing. But it's really funny how every time Curtiz would, you know, deliver something perfect.
Yeah, it's very funny reading that book. Yeah, every new movie, it's like the same procedure as the last movie. It's a great read, by the way. It's a good book.
What about you, Jonas? What do you think of that scene?
Well, that scene is pretty good. I really like this movie. I think it's the best of the three that we watched. And I think the first part of the movie holds up really well as well, when there's not that much action going on, and Peter Blood is basically just hanging around on Port Royal and wooing Olivia de Havilland, who ended up playing against Errol Flynn in a lot of movies. And she sort of didn't like that, as Errol Flynn often played pranks on her. For once, he put a dead snake in her panties, which wasn't that appreciated, oddly enough.
Okay, so asshole territory.
Yeah.
I really like the suggestive energy going on in the scene where she is bidding on him.
Yeah, I really like his way of first this it's her father, I think, who goes up to him and or uncle, and I'm never sure about their relationships, but he goes up and he buys slaves one by one, and when he goes up to Peter Blood, he refuses to open his mouth for him to check out his garniture, and he stands with his hands in his sides and looks at him quite, you know, he's really challenging him in a very funny way. And that's where I think Errol Flynn a bit outshines Douglas Fairbanks, because...
Oh, man. Where are you going with this?
Well, I think this quieter humor Errol Flynn is much better at than Douglas Fairbanks. Douglas Fairbanks was very good at the brash, very loud sense of humor. But Errol Flynn, I think, has a better nuance scale.
Yeah, if we're gonna go there, I gotta say I prefer Douglas Fairbanks. His grinning, skulking, odd frame, imbuing every frame with this energy. He's always ready to burst out improv fighting, some extra, or climb a wall, or jump over some furniture. You don't know where where that guy is gonna do. So I like that, and just that odd posture that he has. I'm more into Fairbanks, I think. If we have to, maybe we don't have to.
I'm gonna stay neutral on the Fairbanks versus
Errol
it's the
Flynn
best controversy.
Yeah, so and as you said, the big fight against Basil Rathbone is on this small island in the middle of nowhere, and they're fighting each other on the shores of the island, which is a beautiful setting, but I'm not sure that Curtiz knew what he was doing here, since he doesn't have any walls to project shadows on as they're fighting. He's totally missing that key aspect of...
No, but the crashing waves in the background was great. It's like a duel to the death or something.
No, exactly. Like the,
no, but it's
Levasseur, the Basil Rathbone character, is sorry, spoiler alert, but he's killed by Captain Blood on the shores. Like, there's a splendid dramatic shot of him being stabbed with the sea behind them, you know, and with the waves, as Anders was saying, and that's a beautifully composed shot. That's the perfect ending to the duel.
I agree.
And when he's lying dead and the waves go over him, it's a very beautiful use of environment. And he's good at that. In all the duels, there's very good framing and use of environment, with or without shadows. But the shadows are, of course... exhilarating.
So that set piece, the duel between Blood and Levasseur, was one of the only scenes shot on location for Captain Blood. And you can see the difference, you know, with the scenes that were built on the set. Sets that were built in the studio. So I have to say a few words about why I think the fight is great, because it was staged by someone named Fred Cavens. I don't know how the English pronunciation is, but so he was the master, the fencing master for the film, and he choreographed the fights. Actually, he choreographed the sword fights in all three films that we're talking about tonight. Actually, you know, it's funny because I know that you guys were let down by Fairbanks, Robin Hood. And you know, and that the best film that you were talking about in that episode was The Three Musketeers. You know, from Max Linder. And guess who was the fencing master on that film?
Oh,
so
all right.
So Fred Cavens, actually, that was his first job as a fencing master for a movie on The Three Musketeers. He was a Frenchman like Max Linder. So he was hired by Linder to do that. And then Douglas Fairbanks saw what he was capable of, and he was like, okay, I want you as well for the Iron Mask and like the Black Pirate and stuff like this. And Fairbanks Jr. also hired him for stuff like the Corsican Brothers and The Exile. And he did many, many other films like The Spanish Main, Anne of the Indies later on. And so all three movies that we're talking about tonight, plus The Adventures of Don Juan as well. So he was really the second most important fencing master in Hollywood. The first one was the one employed by Fairbanks originally on the Mark of Zorro. His name, so that's a Belgian name. I'm not sure I'm gonna say it right, but it's Henry Hutenhove. I hope that's it. Who was from the Belgian Military Institute of Fencing, and who was like he was in charge of the Los Angeles Athletics Club, and so he was hired by Fairbanks on the Mark of Zorro, and that was the first film where they knew what they were doing with the fencing, you know. Before that it was like just clash the swords and, you know, it'll be fine. But that movie really changed everything, and so Hutenhove was the first one, and he did The Three Musketeers and Scaramouche and Prisoner of Zenda and Monte Cristo, lots of stuff for Fairbanks. And then Fred Cavens came into the picture as well, thanks to Max Linder. And I think the important difference between the two was that Hutenhove was about precision and accuracy, but Cavens thought he had to, you know, set himself apart from what Hutenhove was doing, and he thought, okay, I'm going to do something exaggerated but still accurate. So if I may, like there's a great quote that I'm going to read out from Fred Cavens, because for anyone interested in swashbucklers at the time, I think it gives a good insight into what they were doing. So Fred Cavens would say, all movements, instead of being as small as possible, as in competitive fencing, must be large but nevertheless correct. The word is magnified. The routine should contain the most spectacular attacks and parries as possible, but it should remain logical to the situation. So the duel should be a fight and not a fencing competition, but should disregard at times classically correct guards and lunges. The attitudes arising naturally out of fighting should predominate. When this occurs, the whole performance will leave an impression of strength, skill, and manly grace. So that's it. I think he really, he nailed it, and most of his fights are really like beautiful to watch and really convey the feelings that he was going for. And I think that fight between Peter Blood and Levasseur on the shore is perfectly explained by that philosophy, I think, of choreography.
And of course, Michael Curtiz was also a big component, I would say, since he was an old fencer. He actually was a part of the Hungarian fencing team that went to the Olympics in Stockholm in 1912.
Nice.
So he had a bit of a background, and I'm guessing he knew how to capture fencing instinctively from his own background.
Yeah, but at the time, like sometimes the fencing masters would be hired before the directors in some of the pictures, and the action scenes, they would take weeks like to prepare. And I know Michael Curtiz was really big into preparing his movies. He spent lots of time thinking of everything, like camera placements and sets and objects placements and blocking, and all of that. Especially for the fights, for the fight sequences, I think he worked really closely, with the fencing masters.
Well, yeah, it's a fantastic fight, of course, and all of the fencing scenes we're gonna see are pretty much rad. So I'm guessing we don't have that much more to say about Captain Blood.
Wow, there's the third set piece.
Well, yes, we have a third set piece, yes. And
you're skipping the big naval
battle. Which is important because it's remade in the beginning of the Seahawk.
Yeah, they're reusing that. That's where I actually saw that they reused a lot of the material from Captain Blood in the Seahawk.
Hence its importance.
And I just, Jonas, I just gotta chime in that when they have taken the Spanish ship, there's an intertitle. No, there's not an intertitle. I'm still in silent era. They say, then give them a taste of their own iron, and we get some doll action. We've been talking a lot about dolls lately, so the Spaniards are going back to their ship and in these small boats, and Captain Blood and his crew just massacre them.
Oh yeah,
and there's a wonderful shot of one of these small boats just exploding, and there are dolls flying everywhere. I love these dolls.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's focus in on the last set piece, the naval battle, the piece de résistance of Captain Blood, that I wanted to skip over for some reason.
No.
Sorry about that.
No, I think he has some great ideas actually in there. This fog on the water. They approach the French ship like they put a French flag on the mast to make it appear like they are a friendly ship. So they approach really slowly, and the camera is on the deck amongst the men on the deck. So at their level, it's really immersive. And then Curtiz takes an exterior shot. You see the cannon coming out of the opening, on the side of the ship. The camera kind of does a tracking pan around it, and you can see the men behind the cannon waiting for the battle to begin. And when the battle begins, you've got great stuff like shots from inside the ship, and the hull is broken or blown apart by cannonballs.
That's one of the shots that reused in the Seahawk, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. There is in the Seahawk.
Yeah, it's intense stuff.
Very good shot, yeah.
And when the whole ship blows up, that's a huge explosion.
What an explosion.
Yeah. But there's other stuff that will be reused in the Seahawk, like when they start boarding the ship, they send those grappling hooks. And there's a guy actually caught by a grappling hook, and killed, and that I don't think the shot is reused, but the idea is reused, I think, in the Sea Hawk.
Yeah, I think it's another guy, but still.
Like this,
Yeah.
at some stage
grappled
in
to
Captain Blood, at the end, you have you have some guy on top of the mast, and he's like, he falls down on another guy who's mid mast on a like horizontal, beam, and so he falls on top of that guy, and then they fall down to the deck, which is like several levels of action in one shot, which it's the kind of stuff that sets me off in movies.
Yeah, you feel bad for the stunt guys there.
I
They
definitely
really had to take a real beating.
But it's really like, it's a scene where we see stuff I'd never seen before in movies. At the time anyway. The hull being blown apart from, and the shot from the inside of the ship, and that kind of stuff, I think was really, people, as you said, Jonas, like people at the time didn't think that Curtiz was pushing the envelope, but really it's in the details that you see that he was really, attempting stuff that was groundbreaking.
Absolutely. And there's a guy swinging from a rope, kicking two guys out of that's sitting on a beam. They're going into the water. Also a shot that's been reused in the Seahawk. And there's this great sense of chaos, but it's controlled chaos. Curtiz knows exactly what he's doing with everything. A truly great sea battle. Yeah. What else can be said?
Well, it was a success and was the reason why Warner Brothers continued to do swashbucklers in the 30s, thanks to Captain Blood, which leads us directly into our next movie.
Yes, The Adventures of Robin Hood, that came out in 1938, with Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and Basil Rathbone. So the three guys, they were becoming an item almost. So I have to give Olivia de Havilland some props, I think, because I think she's a very good actress and really delivers on her. I mean, her roles is not that interesting. They're these typical female roles from the 30s, where she's like the love interest and doesn't really have much going on except being in love with Errol Flynn's character. But she conveys this with such this lightness in her appearance and her performance. And so you get instantly smitten with her. I think she's really awesome. And she is, I think, the only one still living from these movies.
So if you're listening, Olivia, we really like your movies.
Yeah, a big shout out to Olivia, who is like turning 104 soon, I think. Yeah, Robin Hood.
Yeah, Robin Hood.
Anders, what did you make of this movie?
No, but I agree. She is very good at portraying this infatuation or yearning. I think we've seen a few movies now where the female lead is pretty good at acting that, while the male lead is kind of bland in that department. So I sometimes have a hard time discerning why they yearn for them, but they do.
They do.
The attraction of the sword.
Yeah.
yeah.
Stands for something else,
okay.
you know.
Thanks. The pieces are coming together.
Well,
now.
they do detail a love scene in this book that we're reading on Curtiz, from Robin Hood, actually, where Olivia de Havilland and Robin Hood is, or Errol Flynn, Robin Hood and Maid Marian is having this moment in a, I'm guessing it's a castle tower or something like that. And apparently Curtiz really wanted Olivia to give this her all, and she kissed Errol Flynn so passionately that, well, he was showing off quite some quite some stuff beneath his very tight tights. Yeah.
You're going for the rating again?
Props to Olivia.
We should have invited her on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably should have. But yeah, you wonder what I thought about it. But I mean, initially it has a good tempo. I think Curtiz is very good at keep things moving. We get a pretty early one on many brawl where they throw some furniture and flipping tables and stuff.
Yeah, it's very Jackie Chan, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It always works. I love when they throw furniture. There's a really big chair he's throwing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huge.
And well,
and then he just starts to kill off people with his bow.
Yeah. And
pretty murderous Robin Hood here.
Yeah, and I mean, all of the arrows being shot is shot by an expert bowman, Howard Hill, who was like, I'm guessing, the greatest bowman of all time. He's the one who's doing that amazing shot where he's splitting an arrow with another arrow, shooting on a target.
That was a trick, though.
Yeah,
it was a trick, yeah. I don't think he actually made the shot. I think that there was an episode of Mythbusters about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Howard Hill. Sorry, I interrupted you, Jonas. Go ahead.
Well, apparently he was paid for every arrow being sent into. No, he wasn't paid. The stunt persons who were taking the arrows in the chest were paid like $150 or something. I'm guessing it's pretty dangerous, even though they were padding, of course, and he wasn't shooting all of his power. But I mean, can you imagine prepping yourself to be shot in the heart? That must be quite intimidating.
Yeah, but I don't.
It's kind of like I heard about Donnie Yen paying extra for knocking people out for real.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the next level. Yeah.
Next level douchebagness.
There is a beautiful shot with an arrow where the camera pans and follow it when it sticks to a door in this opening.
Yeah, you're right. And actually, I've read something about Curtiz. Unfortunately, I've never seen it, but his first American film was a silent romance called The Third Degree from 1926, and apparently there is a sequence shot from the perspective of a bullet in motion. 1926, but so the film still exists, but it's only like at the Library of Congress or whatever in the United States.
Oh man,
it's never been released, but reportedly it includes that sequence.
So he's the originator, possibly.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Possibly. 1926. I don't know of any earlier attempts at shooting something like that. Yeah. Yeah, but I think you're right, and Curtiz has great ideas. Like at some stage, there's in the first half of the film, there's like a montage of Robin robbing, the king's men, and fighting for the people. And at some stage, there's like a guy who grabs a woman, and we understand that he wants to attack her and molest her. But Robin kills him with an arrow, shoots him in the back. Except before killing the guy, the arrow goes through a candle flame and extinguishes it. And at this very precise moment, there's that lightning from outside, and so the shot is lit by the flame, then by lightning. And like it's all in the space of like 2 seconds. You have like 3 different types of lights in one shot. Again, it's in details, but it's stuff that we haven't necessarily seen it before.
And I really like the sound of the arrows. They're making this fantastic. It's like this iconic sound that has been engraved in all of our conscious. This is how arrows sound when they are moving to a target in movies. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so basically what you guys are saying, because this precise use of light and mood and capturing movement and sound makes him at least an action auteur, if nothing else.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he wasn't the actual director who was intended to make this movie. William Keely started to direct Robin Hood, since Errol Flynn had begged Jack Warner to not let Michael Curtiz direct the movie. So here he had his first way as a star to push the Warner Bros. No, let's skip Curtiz for this one. Let's use another director. But William Keely wasn't up to it. The production bogged down, and a couple of weeks into production, Hal Wallis eventually decided that, let's call in Curtiz and save the movie, because the action is pretty stale and uninteresting. And fortunately, most of the action scenes hadn't been shot yet, so in rides our savior, Michael Curtiz. And I'm guessing Errol Flynn is sitting in a corner steaming.
Yeah, he's fuming, I think, at that point. But I think Keely, he shot like 8 weeks approximately, and it was only exterior scenes, outdoors they went to some kind of park in one of the states in the US and shot there, and Curtiz like shot all of the indoors action scenes. So the one in the beginning when he comes with the deer and challenges the would-be king, and the one in the end, the final duel. So that was definitely Curtiz, and I think he reshot like parts of the tournament, the archery tournament. Curtiz reshot some of it, and he added some scenes to the, at some stage Robin Hood and company, they attack like a wagon, a gold wagon in the forest. They jump from the trees, down. And, so that was definitely from Curtiz as well. Like he added some shots to it to make it more dynamic.
It's so funny. Anders, you go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so this explains why the movie kind of stopped dead for me in the forest. But you're saying he shot those scenes as well. I was kind of hoping it was the.
Well, but most of the shots there are from Keely, but Curtiz added some shots to the scenes.
Yeah, he spruced it up.
I think those shots of when they're actually jumping down from the trees, and it looks like they're lumping it together. I think he wanted them to look like they were like falling like fruit or something.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
If memory serves right, which explains why they look really weird when they're leaping down onto these tax collectors that are coming through there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. Not the least, of course, in the final duel.
I thought you were gonna say Marion's wardrobe.
Yeah, Maid Marian's wardrobe is constantly changing, and she has. I mean, she's the original diva. She's fantastic.
Yeah, it reminded me kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Raw Deal, switching costumes every now and then throughout.
Of course, of course.
Stuff. But the best part is Bess, her elderly maiden, or what do you say, when she wears a kind of fleece hubcap.
Yeah,
and then later kind of red plastic trash can thing. On her head. Very good hats.
Very good hats in this movie. And of course, Robin Hood's pal, I think he's called Red Will. He has the best hat. He looks like a rooster. He is hilarious every time he appears.
He reminded me a bit of Owen Wilson, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a bit of an Owen Wilson vibe to him. Absolutely. But let's get into the final duel of the movie, where
I'm just rambling.
where Errol and Basil are going at it again, and here we have those fantastic shadows appearing. They're doing a lot of things. They're using a lot of props. They're turning over tables. They're running around. He's using camera movements very acutely, and they're running downstairs fighting, and it sort of feels like everything's happening. It's a great fight. And I think they wanted to top themselves actually from Captain Blood. They felt like let's bring this to another level.
Absolutely. You know, I think when you look at the duels from all three films, you feel like every time they make the new one, they want to top themselves from the previous one, you know. So yeah, I think this one really expands on the one from Captain Blood, and it kind of announces the hyper rear heights that it's going to reach in the Seahawk at the end. But I love Curtiz's use of architecture. Actually, you know, sometimes they're fighting on stairs, you know, like those stairs that go around a tower.
Spiral staircases.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're fighting on that, and there's no, like, it's open, you know, there's no rail guard or anything. And it looks exactly like... Have you seen The Rocketeer from Joe Johnston?
No, I don't think I have.
I saw it in the cinema. I don't remember much.
So, like, Timothy Dalton, I think he's playing like a Hollywood movie star, and he's shooting a swashbuckler, and it looks exactly like that scene. Like, it's almost the same set, and you know, I don't know about the moves, but it looks a lot like the final duel from that Robin Hood. And yeah, some pretty impressive stuff. Like the stuntman Fred Graham, who was doubling Rathbone. So during the final fall, he broke his ankle. Yeah, but the fall itself is pretty impressive, actually. I thought they made a great job. They did a great job there, and so the film was like he was budgeted at under $2 million, but I think it almost cost $2 million. And one thing that's rarely mentioned, you know, is like today as well, but at the time it was true as well that a lot of the action was shot by second unit directors. And you know, we rarely talk about those guys, and so the one on Robin Hood, on The Adventures of Robin Hood, was named B. Reeves Easton, and he was like widely known in Hollywood for shooting complex and dangerous action scenes. So there was a 1925 Ben-Hur movie that had to be shot with like 42 cameras, and included a lot of horse casualties. Like they killed a lot of horses to shoot that scene, unfortunately. And then there was also the movie The Charge of the Light Brigade, directed by Curtiz with Errol Flynn from 1936. And also here the action was supervised by B. Reeves Easton, and they used 300 horses, 280 extras, and again there were some like casualties for the horses and like several injuries for the stuntmen. And he also did like the big burning of Atlanta scene for Gone with the Wind a year later, a year after Robin Hood. Yeah, so that guy, like, you know, we don't talk about him too much, but he was important for the history of action filmmaking in Hollywood, and he was here on The Adventures of Robin Hood to supervise the main action scenes. So mainly the first one with the deer when Robin Hood challenges the king, and the last one, the climax. So yeah, I think a lot can be attributed to him, even though he's not really an unsung hero because he did some despicable stuff, especially with the animals on his sets. But yeah, he was important at the time as well. And you know, I have a theory. I'm gonna lay it on you guys. Tell me if I'm if I'm talking shite. But you know, when I watch all those three movies that we're talking about tonight, and I watch Robin Hood, I think is my favorite actually. maybe because of the Technicolor. I don't know, but I think it has a vitality and an energy for most of the film that I can really agree with. But like, I think in Robin Hood, it feels like I'm seeing spectacle rather than action. So let me explain myself. Like in Captain Blug and the Seahawk, the action that we see, it derives from the plot, right? Like it's an inevitable consequence of the events that are presented to us. So like if like it kind of writes itself into the script. And none of the action scenes, I think, in Captain Blood and the Seahawk, if you remove them, you lose plot information, but you don't lose character information. I don't think they help in deepening our knowledge or understanding of the characters. So it's like plot-driven action. But in Robin Hood, it feels like the plot is kind of thought and conceived around the set pieces, and like change them together. So almost feels like when writing the script, they're like, okay, we need like an initial set piece, and then we'll have the tournament, and then we'll have the final duel, and okay, let's come up with a story that kind of glues everything together, and like if you remove those action scenes, you lose a lot of information about the hero. I think in the deer scene in the beginning, without it, then you're not witness to the fact that he's a dashing hero and a rebel. And if you remove the attack on the tax collectors in the forest, then you lose his the information that he's a great he has intelligence and strategic abilities. That he can outsmart his adversaries. And then the archery tournament is important for his pride and arrogance. Because like he knows it's a trap, he goes anyway, and he's caught. Like, and without it, then you lose an important character beat. And I thought of it as spectacle in the sense that the sequences, they're conceived as a show of character sprinkled with great physical and cinematic feats, and it's more like character-driven action. As opposed to plot-driven.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take. Actually, I can totally see where you're coming from. That absolutely.
Yeah, it makes me appreciate the movie more. Actually, it's a very good take.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it totally explains him. He's a man of action, rather than the other characters in.
Like the other characters, they're caught in the action.
Yeah,
they must perform action, to like for the story. But like I think in Robin Hood, like you say, it's really the man of action.
Yeah, which makes him Robin Hood, an action star of today, one of the first perhaps. So yeah, very interesting take. Great. Maybe we should leave with that great take, leave Robin Hood behind, and finish off this session with the Seahawk that came out in 1940 with Errol Flynn, but no, not with Olivia de Havilland and Basil Rathbone, because Basil Rathbone couldn't be bothered. Olivia de Havilland wasn't that keen on doing another movie with Errol Flynn and being pranked all the time. So yeah, they had to come up with a new cast of characters. Brenda Marshall plays the female heroine, Donna Maria. Claude Rains, who was also in Robin Hood, plays Don Jose Alvarez de Córdoba, and as you put it, Alex, the villain of action, the villain with the sword, is played by Henry Daniel, who plays Lord Wolfingham. And also in a supporting role, Alan Hale, who played Little John in Robin Hood, and who actually played that part in the Douglas Fairbanks movie as well. And later played the part once again in the 50s. So this Alan Hale guy was really synonym with Little John. And he followed Flynn in a lot of movies, being a a quirky supporting actor. Yeah, so we're into the Seahawk. We're back in the swashbuckling pirate things going on. Errol Flynn's character Geoffrey Thorpe is, well, he's sort of employed by Queen Elizabeth and sort of not, going about raiding Spanish ships. Spain is preparing their big fleet to charge and attack England, and England is trying to stave this conflict with diplomacy. And Errol Flynn on the side, sort of not condoning his actions, but sort of, yes, totally condoning his actions.
So, if I may, I think it's a great example of the idea behind the swashbucklers. You know, he's a pirate, but he's a good guy. You know,
yeah.
He really isn't a pirate. He works for the queen, but he employs pirate methods. But he has a code of honor. You know, this kind of gray area where the swashbuckler could work without being stopped by the Hays Code, and by retaining that kind of exotic flavor.
Yeah. So another rogue for us to dissect. Anders, what did you find with the Seahawk? Was it
what did I find?
Well, in action terms, I guess.
It kind of emulates a couple of different movies. It feels like it's kind of a political thriller or something, and then for a while it's almost a heist movie, and then some kind of one of those jungle survival movies for a while, and then back to naval battle. The action, I thought it worked really well in this big mass battle when everyone is fighting everyone. It goes into these shorter focusing more in close-ups on different parts of the fight, many different people doing stuff, or what to say. So I really liked the way it moved around in this big battle, focusing on different aspects.
Yeah, it's the fact that Curtiz really, goes from wide panoramic shots, establishing shots of the battle, and then drills in onto, specific duels inside this battle.
Yeah. And that he jumps between several different was the most impressive.
Yeah, I mean that's one of Curtiz' strengths. I think he's always pushing the story and the action forward. It never really gets any boring. It's always something else is coming up, and he's very good at this tempo.
Yeah, because that cutting between different aspects of a fight, usually that bogs movies down, because you stay at one fight for a bit too long, and then you go back to the other fight that is supposed to go on at the same time. And I mean, it just drags out time in a very... It's hard to balance. So I think he handles it very well. My go-to guy for these things are usually Sammo Hung, who is expert at jumping between different fights that are going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So it reminded me a bit of that.
A bit of Sammo Hung in the Seahawk. That's great. And
yeah, in the structure.
And we of course have this great climactic sword fight, which doesn't really... it is a bit trick filmed, since the actor Henry Daniell couldn't use a sword for his life. He was really poor, and so they had to trick film this with the stunt actor, and only use close-ups of Henry Daniell. But
trick film. I thought you meant it was stop motion or
Well,
something.
they filmed behind him, I guess, most parts, showing off Errol going at him.
But I don't think it takes anything from the
No.
scene. I think it works very well with choice of angles and stuff. And I love how he is the placement of them in the room or in the space. Yet again, his use of environment or you said architecture. These shots are very well. I like the placement of the fencers in these.
So yeah, once again, Fred Cavans staged the fight, and actually, it's funny that you should mention Jonas that the actor was doubled extensively because the main stunt double was Ralph Faulkner, who was the American saber champion at the Olympics twice in a row. And so he started his career working for Fred Cavans, but then he became an extremely important fencing master in Hollywood as well, in his own right. After the Second World War, he worked for Columbia Pictures, and he made like dozens of swashbucklers for them. So that was great, like seeing him, the film historian, the would-be film historian in me was like, oh yeah, so that's the scene where, he really shows off his skills under Kevin's direction. Yeah, that's as you said, I think Curtiz is trying to top what he did in Robin Hood with the shadows and expressionistic use of light and architecture. And I think the scene took 2 weeks to film actually. Which is quite a long time at the time.
I mean, Hong Kong movies, of course, film fight scenes for like 10 weeks or something, but back in the day, this really wasn't the case. You needed to be on schedule, but Curtiz really took his time here, and that's evident.
Yeah, I guess mainly Jackie Chan and people like the big guys have more or less unlimited time, I suppose.
Yeah, and
other Hong Kong movies are done pretty quick, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
no, but but the perfect example is like the Drunken Master 2, where they filmed like for 4 months, I think. They filmed the final fight for 4 months. Yeah, but then again, that was like 50 years or 40 years. 50 years later, after the Seahawk. So yeah, at the time of the Seahawk, even though it's a major picture from a major studio, that was pretty unusual that it would go on for that long. And I think the producers were afraid that they were really overdoing it and going over budget. And I think at the time, like, there was a flu as well on the set. And like Errol Flynn was sick and Curtiz was sick as well, and it was a really difficult time for them. But so the Seahawk cost less money than Robin Hood. It wasn't in Technicolor because like they had like mixed results from the box office from other Technicolor films, so they went back to black and white. But that being said, sorry, I must like go back quickly on the opening naval battle. But they have actual ships. Like they're not in the sea, but they have huge. They have complete ships. They're not models. They're like full scale ships that they're destroying, like tearing to pieces. And so I know they use some stock footage from Captain Blood, but I think Hal Wallis wanted to only use stock footage from Captain Blood. And every day Curtiz would film new scenes anyway because he didn't want to do that. Like you had the memo saying, "What are you doing? We already have the shots. Stop shooting new stuff."
This is totally meaningless. But I mean, they had built this huge tank, Warner Bros. For this battle with the big ships, the real ships. Which is mind-boggling to think of. That they actually had like this big water tank and 2 old 16th century ships in it, and
like they could make it appear like there were waves and like the ships were were sinking and stuff like this, all because they had like, you know, hydraulic rams in place and stuff like this, which is insane. Like that was really the, I mean, that was really an example of how much money could go into some of the sets, and yet the producers were like, okay, let's use some stock footage for the rest of the battle. Which is yeah, just weird when you think about it. I'm really thankful to people like Curtiz who think, no, we have to make it bigger and better than Captain Blood. So I'm gonna shoot some more stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten a great big appreciation for Curtiz after watching these movies. I mean, these kinds of movies aren't my favorite type of movies for sure, and I think these 30s movies, they tend to drag a bit for me, but you can totally appreciate the artistic sensibilities going into this movie. I think, I mean, you and me, Anders, we both talked about this. You mentioned that Erik Wolfgang Korngold, the composer, had been inspired by another composer earlier on, Alex. Both... Yeah, and we both, me and Anders, when we watched The Seahawk, said to each other, doesn't this sound a lot like Star Wars? And then we did a checkup on it, and yes, of course, John Williams was greatly inspired by Korngold.
Oh yeah,
writing the Star Wars theme songs.
Yeah. There's a lot of Korngold in John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, and you know, this generation of great composers. I love the music from Korngold in all three films. Like, he was really someone who could create infinite variations on a theme while keeping it consistent, you know, and he would do very quick tonal shifts. He would go from romance to adventure in like 2 notes, you know, so you would have like those emotions, they would come clashing with one another in one scene. And you have the sweeping melodic movements and energetic rhythmic accompaniments that really punctuate the films. And I thought he was really I think he was the most important composer at the time, with Max Steiner, who did King Kong, you know, at the time for adventure movies, you know. That was, I think it really elevates all 3 films to a higher standard.
Well, I would agree to an extent, but I do think they're overusing music in the 30s movies. Me and Anders have been talking about this a lot.
I was just gonna chime in, but if people have listened, I guess it's starting to get obvious that I don't like music in films.
I guess what
almost that.
I guess what you could say against Korngold is that he does do some Mickey Mousing. You know, he syncs the music exactly to the action beats, almost to a caricatural degree. But I find it irresistible because there's just so much joy and feeling of escapism in it. I'm totally on board.
Well, absolutely. I really liked when, I think it's in The Seahawk, when Errol Flynn's character is making a speech to his men in the beginning of the movie, after a battle, I think it is. And the music stops as he's speaking. And the second he has finished speaking and everybody's cheering for him, the music soars to a triumphant beat. And it was almost... comically triumphant, but in a way I like that. That was a bit cute almost, the way the music accentuated everything.
Yeah, I think it's part of the charm of the film. I think the music is just so good. Like, I don't mind at all.
And I just gotta say that whatever I think of these movies, it's hard to say they are. I mean, they are very well made, as we have said repeatedly. So there's always that.
Yeah, you can't fault the craftsmanship of Michael Curtiz.
Yeah, and everybody on these movies.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And I mean, almost everybody gives their all of the actors, even the bit part actors, like the maid too, Maid Marian. Both Anders and me were thinking, wow, she's really good. She's got a crappy role where she's playing this very antsy, old-timey maid looking out for Maid Marian's virginity and stuff like that. But she was fantastic. Although, I mean, she really encapsulated that character. And a lot of these character actors, of course, played those parts over and over and over and over again. They played the same part in new movies over and over and again. But I find it cute as well. I find it very endearing that it's so it's very formulaic in a way, but I can really get behind it as well. Yeah, I'm guessing this sort of summarizes these movies for us, and Michael Curtiz for us. Alex, do you have any last words?
Any last words before you?
We're gonna have to kill you after this, Alex. I'm sorry.
Too much has been said.
Yeah. Recently I've been wondering when looking at your timeline on Twitter, and now even more so in this episode, why are we the ones doing this? We should just leave it to you.
I know, you guys. No, you guys are great. I love your approach. I hope I didn't speak too much. I did warn Anders beforehand that I tend to go.
I love
on
it.
tangents, you know. But
no.
Any last words? Well, no. I'm just really glad we talked about the genre in the 30s because, I think it was important for action cinema at the time. It's unmissable if you want to trace the history of the action genre. And so that was the second cycle, like really the golden age of Hollywood swashbucklers, actually of sound swashbucklers. Because after that, really the interest of the people will change, and there's World War II. So for a time, the swashbucklers just vanish for a couple of years, and then they come back in the late 40s and in the 50s, but always with like smaller budgets. You know, there's less, the scope is less wide. Less impressive, and I think the best swashbucklers that were made after the war actually came either from England or from France. Especially in the 60s, like in the 50s, you had a lot of television series swashbucklers from England, and then in the 60s, it was really a series of French swashbucklers that were really setting the standard there. Mostly from director André Hunebelle, who I'm sure you guys will do an episode on.
Well, now we have to.
Well, if you will guess it. No.
Fantastic. And the swashbuckler, of course, has tried to live on today with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and so on. Although now it's in a slump, I guess. But I'm sure it will return, as it always does.
Yeah, it's a pretty isolated franchise, isn't it? The Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Yes. I mean, sword fighting wise, we will probably look more towards wuxia cinema ahead, I think. I mean, I think swashbucklers has kind of been important for that genre as well. Although that wuxia has a long literary tradition, of course. But I think Douglas Fairbanks movies were very popular in China as well, as they were everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he was truly the first movie star who was. I mean, he was so big all over the world, and I'm guessing Errol got that as well, even though he came to hate the swashbuckler genre. But that's life. Yeah, I'm guessing we're gonna have to close up shop now.
It's only been an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, we could continue.
You wanna? Yeah, we can go on.
I mean, Anders wanted to listen to us talk for like 10 hours straight, so who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, a bit disappointed.
Oh man, sorry, Anders. Sorry. So anyway,
But I mean, you have read books and stuff.
we're trying too much, eh? Yeah.
No.
So,
not at all.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode.
Thanks, guys, for having me. That was great.
And you can follow Alex at head exposure on Twitter. Is there any other place people can chime in with your thoughts on action cinema?
No, that's about it.
Okay, thank you and goodbye, everybody.